All right, let's dive right into this explainer and really demystify the absolute high-stakes world of surgery. When most people think of surgery, they just picture a lone surgeon holding a scalpel, right? But in reality, from the very first incision all the way through to recovery, it is an incredibly precise, totally multidisciplinary science. So if you've ever wondered exactly how modern medical teams pull off these complex, life-saving procedures without total chaos, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to unpack the essential foundational principles that govern this completely fascinating medical specialty.
To really wrap our heads around this complex field, we're going to follow a pretty strict roadmap today. First, we'll look at the stakes of surgery. 2, preparing for the operation. 3, what happens inside the operating theater. 4, the WHO safety checklist. 5, surgical skills and wounds. And finally, number 6, recovery and complications.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the stakes of surgery. We really have to start by establishing exactly why the operating room is governed by such intense rules and regulations. This entire field is grounded in incredibly stringent ethical and publication standards, like the ones you'd find in the IRPub International Journal, for example. Surgery isn't just about having good hands. It's deeply, deeply rooted in an unwavering code of conduct. Medical science has its own rigid set of rules and a mandated baseline level of skill established by governing bodies, and every single practitioner is held strictly to these exact standards. There is a specific phrase here that is absolutely crucial: bound duty. Practitioners are strictly obligated to discharge their duties with the utmost professionalism. Whether that's how they conduct physical exams, prescribe meds, or perform actual procedures, they are bound to the rules. In fact, in medical legal cases like unnatural or suspicious deaths, it is literally mandatory for the physician to report them to the authorities. So you see, the stakes here extend way beyond the individual procedure. It's a massive matter of legal and societal trust. And because of that immense trust placed in surgeons, any slip from that required baseline, well, it leads to either medical malpraxis, which is basically a failure of skill, or medical negligence, which is a failure of care. Failing to abide by the rules of the specialty doesn't just mean you had a bad day at work. We're talking heavy penalties, lawsuits, and severe professional punishments. The entire perioperative journey we're about to explore is custom-built to prevent exactly these kinds of deviations. Moving right along to Section 2, preparing for the operation. Now, let's see how this all builds into actual patient care. This beautifully illustrates the enhanced recovery after surgery, or the EARS protocol. It's a modern framework that has famously slashed hospital stay times by treating surgery as a holistic chronological continuum: preoperative, intraoperative, and postoperative care. Surgery isn't just that one chaotic moment on the operating table. It's a full-blown journey. Diving into that very first stage, preoperative care is all about optimizing the patient's health to dramatically improve the actual surgical outcomes. And it's a huge, multi-pronged approach. Medical teams focus heavily on educating the patient, making vital nutritional adjustments, getting them to stop smoking, and enforcing really strict fasting guidelines. By prepping the body almost like a marathon runner before a big race, the medical team significantly cuts down the risks associated with general anesthesia and the physical trauma of the surgery itself. Next up, Section 3, inside the operating theater. Okay, so imagine you're the surgeon about to step into the high-energy, totally sterile environment of the operating theater. Before you even think about touching a piece of equipment, you have to execute this rigorous tactile sequence. The transition from the regular outside hospital into the sterile field isn't just a quick hand wash in the sink. Oh no, it's a meticulously timed scrub all the way up to the elbows, followed by sterile gowning and gloving. This highly choreographed ritual is what ensures the environment is completely sterile, so no dangerous pathogens can sneak into the patient's open body cavities. Which brings us to Section 4, the WHO's safety checklist. Once everyone is finally scrubbed in, we hit this massive, critical barrier between a routine surgery and a totally fatal error. The 2009 WHO Surgical Safety Checklist, which was actually inspired by pre-flight aviation checks, is arguably one of the most important developments in modern medicine. The surgical team is forced to just stop, entirely, at 3 exact moments: before the induction of anesthesia, right before the skin incision is made, and before the patient leaves the room. They confirm the patient's identity, the specific surgical site, and any potential blood loss. It sounds remarkably simple, right? But this mandatory communication protocol literally prevents catastrophic, irreversible mistakes.
All right, Section 5, surgical skills and wounds.
With safety totally locked on by the checklist, the actual intraoperative stage kicks off. This is where the surgeon breaks out a very specialized toolkit of physical skills. These core competencies range from the incredibly precise infiltration of local anesthetic to skin lesion excision and draining abscesses. And then, as the procedure wraps up, the delicate arts of suturing, complex knot tying, and drain insertion come into play. Make no mistake, these are highly technical, fine motor actions that require years and years of dedicated practice to perfect.
But here's the thing, the surgeon's job definitely does not end when that final knot is tied. Every single surgical incision fundamentally causes damage to local structures. It's just a fact. And this intentional trauma kicks off a complex, totally inevitable biological sequence. The body's immune system immediately sounds the alarm, triggering acute inflammation, which eventually transitions into chronic inflammation and tissue remodeling as the wound heals. The surgical team has to expertly manage this whole biological progression to make sure the tissues actually mend correctly, without infection or crazy amounts of scarring.
So, what happens when things actually go wrong? Because despite perfect suturing, totally strict sterile fields, and diligent WHO checklists, the human body is just wild and unpredictable. We've got to pivot our narrative for a second to look at the unpredictable postoperative realities.
That leads us right into Section 6, Recovery and Potential Complications. This is the final stage of our ERS protocol. Now, early mobilization of the patient is key here, getting them up and moving, but the medical team on the wards remains on extremely high alert.
One of the absolutely most terrifying postoperative emergencies is a hemorrhage. This is active bleeding that can theoretically happen after literally any surgical procedure. And when it does happen, it requires immediate, rapid-fire assessment and life-saving management right there on the hospital wards. The team has to stabilize the patient's blood pressure and stop that bleeding before it leads to irreversible shock. It's intense. But man, hemorrhage is definitely not the only risk out there. Once a patient is out of theater and on the ward, the medical teams are constantly hawking for life-threatening systemic shocks like sepsis, acute unmanaged pain, severe nausea and vomiting, and post-op pyrexia, which is a major fever. There is also a real risk of post-operative delirium, particularly in older patients, and the ever-present danger of deep vein thrombosis, or DVT, which, by the way, is exactly why that early mobilization we talked about is pushed so heavily.
Stepping back for a second to look at the big picture, this really sums up the whole shebang. Every single protocol we have just talked about, from those ethical and legal standards to the fasting guidelines, the scrubbing routines, and that brilliant WHO safety checklist, they all exist for one sole reason: to safely navigate the inherent, massive risks of bodily trauma and bring the patient swiftly back to their baseline health. The highly rigid structure of surgery is exactly what makes its incredible success possible in the first place. So considering all those extreme risks and the incredibly complex protocols we just walked through, here's a question for you. Which phase of the surgical journey do you think truly saves the most lives? Is it the sheer physical skill of the surgeon inside the theater? The rigorous checklists before the incision? Or is it that meticulous, watchful care on the recovery ward? I'm going to leave you with that thought to ponder. I really encourage you to look even deeper into the incredible high-stakes science of surgery. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep questioning how the systems around us actually keep us safe. Catch you next time.